Hi guys, sorry that I've been off for a few days here. I was just trying to give you guys an opportunity to catch up on the videos since I had posted a few over the weekend and I had done a few doubles in a single day. So basically my intention was that you guys would just have some time to watch all of the videos so that we were kind of going to be all caught up. On my last video I had said that I was going to stick with statistics for a little bit, but Modesto City just announced that they're going to be extending our break until May 4th, and so the rest of the statistics module is new concepts. It's all things that we haven't been introduced to before, but since we're coming back on May 4th, my intention is to teach those concepts in the classroom and to spend these next few weeks reviewing. So I might start introducing new concepts later on, so like in a week or two, but as for now I kind of want to stick to reviewing a little bit longer, just kind of to see how everything plays out. And also this concept that we're going over today, I think we definitely need practice on because we haven't really seen it since we learned it originally, because it's not one of those that's really embedded in the other modules that we've learned since. So today we are going to be focusing on PEMDAS, or solving problems using the order of operations. When we're using PEMDAS, or when we're solving with PEMDAS, I'm going to write PEMDAS up on the board. That is really great handwriting. PEMDAS, the P stands for parentheses. I don't know if that's how you spell parentheses. It's messy anyway, so pretend it's right. The E stands for exponents. M stands for multiplication. And D stands for division. This is getting messier. This is just looking rough, but we can get through this together. A stands for addition. And S stands for subtraction. What I want you guys to do right now is I want you guys to pause, find a piece of paper or something that you, or even like a notes on your phone, find something and write these down so that you can refer back to them throughout the lesson. So pause, write it down. I'm going to erase, and then we're going to come back and we are all going to have this to reference throughout. Okay, so now I've rewrote PEMDAS on the side of my board, just in a way that's a little bit more consolidated so that it doesn't take up as much board space, which is why I had you guys write it on your own paper so that you guys could reference it, but I would still have the space on my board for the rest of the lesson. So when we're solving with PEMDAS, what this means is that this is the order in which we're going to solve a problem. So that means that if I'm looking at a problem that has multiple operations in it, the first thing I'm going to look for is anything in parentheses. Within parentheses, you're still going to follow the order of operations. So what I mean by that is, say that there's a parentheses with a multiplication problem and an addition problem within. I'm going to solve the multiplication part first because multiplication comes before addition in PEMDAS. So even when I'm looking in parentheses, I'm still always following the same order of operations. E stands for exponents. So if after I've solved everything in parentheses, I'm going to solve exponents. Multiplication and division. This part's important. Multiplication and division are connected, okay? So these two, I solve these from left to right, which means whatever comes first in the problem. If I'm reading, I read left to right. It's however I would naturally read it is how I'm going to solve it. So if there is a division problem and then a multiplication problem, or problem within a single problem, if there's a division symbol and a multiplication symbol, I would solve whichever one came first. So if division comes first, I solve division first. If multiplication comes first, I would solve multiplication first. So these I solve left to right. So they're connected. The same is true for addition and subtraction. I don't necessarily solve addition first just because the A comes before the S in PEMDAS. I solve these ones left to right as well. Now, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, those are all things that you guys have seen since, multiplication and division since 3rd grade, addition and subtraction since way younger than that. But the only one that's relatively new for 6th grade is exponents. Parentheses isn't really an operation in and of itself. If there's no symbol, it means it's multiplication. You guys know how to do multiplication, but parentheses just tells you what to solve first. It's not its its own operation. Exponents is really its own operation that you need to learn. So before I kind of give us examples of how to solve things using PEMDAS, I want to remind us what exponents even mean. So when you see exponents are any time when you see, say, a number or sometimes a variable, let's say like 4, and then you see a little number up here. This number right here is my exponent. This number right here is my base. So how I would solve this, if you look at this, natural reaction is probably either 7 or 12. But when we're doing exponents, I want to be clear here, there is no easy way to solve exponents. Every time you see an exponent, you have to go through the whole process of solving it, which we're going to get to it in a second. But don't try and think like, oh, I've got that snap judgment, I got it right off the top of my head. You probably don't, okay? These are ones that you actually have to work out every single time. I'm not saying you don't because you're not smart enough to get it. I'm just saying that there aren't tricks with exponents. Exponents are one of those things that you actually have to write out and solve every single time. So 4 cubed is how I would say that. Whenever it's a little 3, it's cubed. Whenever it's a little 2, it's squared. Everything else would be the 4th power, or to the power of 4, to the power of 5, the 5th power, things like that. So you can say it in multiple different ways, but it's pretty safe to just say a 4 to the power of 3 or 4 to the 3rd power. Those both work. It's also 4 cubed. What this means is that my number here is a 4. This is my base. That means that the number that I'm going to be writing is a 4, and how many times I'm going to be writing it is my exponent. So that means that I'm writing a 4 3 times. What exponents are is repeated multiplication. Okay, I want to be clear here. This is repeated multiplication. Exponents are the first time you're going to see repeated multiplication. Most often, up until this point, you've been seeing repeated addition, which is just multiplication. Repeated addition equals multiplication. Repeated multiplication is exponents, okay? Like I said, these aren't just facts that you're going to memorize. These are things that you're going to have to work out every single time. So I just said this is repeated multiplication. So 4 to the 3rd power, or 4 cubed, is 4 times 4 times 4. This is my base. This is how many times I write it. So 4 times 4 is 16, and then you do 16 times 4, which is 64, and that is how you'd solve that. I'm going to give us another example. Let's say 5 squared, or 5 to the 2nd power. Okay, so my base here is 5. How many times I write it? 2. And always, exponents are repeated multiplication. So this just means 5 times 5, which is 25. I can also get into bigger numbers where it gets harder. Let's say 7 to the 4th power. Now, my base here, 7. How many times I'm going to write it? 4. So 7 written 4 times, and this is repeated multiplication. I'm actually going to pause, and I want you to pause, and I want you to solve this one yourself. Okay, so there are a few ways that you could have worked this one out. The way that I would do it is I would have grouped it into things that I know. So I know 7 times 7 is 49, and 7 times 7 is 49, and then I would just multiply those together. With multiplication, order does not matter, so it doesn't matter if you do 7 times 7, which is 49, times 7, which is whatever that is, times 7 to get your answer. Either way, you should be getting the same answer. I just grouped it this way because this one is just the way that made most sense to me, but however it works for you, you can solve it that way. So now in order to solve this, I have to do 49 times 49. 9 times 9 is 81. 9 times 4 is 36. Plus 8, 39, 44, 42, 44, 44. Next line I add a 0. Now I'm multiplying with this 4. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 4 is 16. Plus 3 is 19. Now I'm adding, so 1 plus 0 is 1. 6 plus 4 is 10. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 4 is 14, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So my answer to this problem should have been 2,401. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through a little bit of a review on exponents, I'm going to go into a review on PEMDAS because that was kind of the point of this lesson. So PEMDAS is when you see multiple operations in one problem. So anytime you see more than one operation, so you see addition and subtraction, or addition and multiplication, or division and subtraction, you'd follow this order of operations, which is PEMDAS. So that would be parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, which stick together, and then addition and subtraction, which stick together. We've talked about this in my class. The way that I remember PEMDAS is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. There's a lot of different ways that you can remember it, so whatever works for you, use that, okay? But how you'd actually see a PEMDAS problem. So I'm going to write one out. 3 times 10 minus 3 minus 3 squared. So when I'm solving these problems, I actually like to write PEMDAS at the top of each problem, so then I can know when I've finished an operation. So when I'm solving this, the first thing I have to start with is my parentheses. So that means I'm going to look at this problem and find what I have in parentheses. That is 10 minus 3 is in parentheses. So now the only thing I'm going to solve in my first step is just what's in the parentheses, because that's step number 1. So now I have 3 times 10 minus 7. Have I been saying 10 minus 7? I meant to say 10 minus 3. I was getting my answer. 10 minus 3 is 7 minus 3 squared. So everything else is staying the same. The only thing I've changed is what was in the parentheses. I solved it to 7. And since I solved the whole equation, or I solved everything that was in there, I don't need those parentheses anymore. I have one number left. I'm done. I've gotten rid of my parentheses because I've solved what's within. So I'm done with my parentheses. Now I have to solve my exponents. So my exponents are whenever I see that little number up top, which is 3 squared. I always like to solve my exponents off to the side. So my base here is 3. I have to write it 2 times, and that is repeated multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9. So that means everything else is staying the same. The only thing that's changing is my 3 squared is now a 9. Okay, so now I'm looking at this and I know that I have a multiplication problem and I have a subtraction problem. If I'm looking through here, I've solved my exponents, I have multiplication next. So that means that the next thing I'm going to be solving is this. If I had division, I could remember those two things are grouped together, so it would be whatever came first. But this group is before this group, which means I'm still solving multiplication and division before I would solve addition and subtraction. So I have 3 times 7. That's the only part of my problem I'm going to solve right now, which is 21. And then I'm just bringing the rest down. 21 minus 9. So 21 minus 9. Now I only have one operation left. I know how to do that. 21 minus 9 is 12. And that is my answer. Alrighty, here is another example of a problem that you would use PEMDAS in order to solve. So if you want to pause this and try and solve this on your own first, I suggest you do so, and then you can press play and we can go over our answers together. So pause. Alright, I hope you checked your work. So in order to solve this, we are going to start with P, which stands for parentheses. So I'm going to look for what in this problem has parentheses, and I'm going to solve that first. So 12 minus 2 is in parentheses, which means that is the first thing that I need to solve. So I'm going to leave the whole rest of the problem the same, and the only thing I'm going to change is this. So 12 minus 2 is 10, and then I'm going to bring down the rest of the problem. And now I am going to see what do I do next. So PEMDAS, first thing is parentheses, second thing is exponents, which means my exponents are going to come next, which would be 7 squared. So remember, I solve those over here. I like to solve those off to the side. My base is 7. It's written 2 times, and it's repeated multiplication. So 7 squared really means 7 times 7, which is 49. So now instead of writing 7 squared, I am going to change that to 49. Now I have multiplication and I have addition. Multiplication and division come next, so I'm going to solve 2 times 10, which is 20 plus 49. I don't know if you can hear Chomper snoring so loud. Yes, I'm talking about you. He heard his name and now all of a sudden he's perking up. The only thing that's left to do is add. There's no other operation to worry about. So 20 plus 49 is 69, and that is our answer. Okay, our next problem is a little bit more difficult, so if you want to pause this and try and solve this on your own, do so now. He's so loud. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to solve in this problem is parentheses. But if I'm looking in my parentheses, there is more than one operation within parentheses. So I have a multiplication problem, I have a subtraction problem, and I have exponents, which means I still have to follow the operations, the order of operations just within that parentheses. So if I have a multiplication, subtraction, and exponents, which of those comes first? So I'm looking at my parentheses already. Exponents would come first. So the first thing I'm going to solve is 7 squared. I still have to keep my parentheses because I have not solved everything within. So the only thing I'm going to be changing is the 7 squared. So I have 11 times 7 minus 7 squared. 7 is my base, written 2 times. It's repeated multiplication, so 7 times 7, which is 49. So 7 squared is the same thing as 7 times 7, which is 49. And then I'm going to bring the rest of my problem down. Now I'm going to see, still within these parentheses, what do I solve next? I have a multiplication and I have subtraction within my parentheses. And if I'm looking at my order of operations, multiplication comes before subtraction. So that is what I would solve next. So the only thing I'm solving is 11 times 7. I'm bringing the rest down. I'm keeping my parentheses because I have not finished solving everything within yet. That was weird to just like cut off. But there's still an operation in there, so I'm not finished yet. So my parentheses have to stay until I'm finished. There's no more operations left. I've solved everything that I can solve. So I have 11 times 7, which is 77, minus 49, minus 10. Now, I still have something in my parentheses, which means that the last thing I have to solve is that subtraction, which was in my parentheses. So I have 77 minus 49. I'm going to actually just write that over to the side so that I can solve it. 7 minus 9, can't do that, so I have to borrow. 17 minus 9 is 8. 6 minus 4 is 2, so I have 28. And now that I've solved all of the operations, I'm left with one number. There's nothing else I can do in that parentheses. I can get rid of the parentheses. They're done. Minus 10. 28 minus 10 is 18. And there is my answer. All right, so one more sample problem. So I'm going to look at this problem and I'm going to see what do I solve first. I know I'm going to solve whatever's in parentheses first. But if I'm looking in the parentheses, I have subtraction, I have exponents, and I have another thing with the subtraction in it. Within my parentheses, remember, I still have to follow order of operations. So what would I solve first? My subtraction or my exponents? I'm going to solve my exponents before I solve my subtraction. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solve 3 squared. 3 squared, my base is 3. It's written 2 times. It is repeated multiplication. 3 squared is the same thing as 3 times 3, which is 9. So now I have 39 minus 9 divided by 10 minus 5. Remember, I'm keeping those parentheses around it because I haven't solved the entire thing yet. And now I have 2 subtraction problems. At this point, it really doesn't matter which one you solve first. You could even do them both and bring them both down at the same time. They're both subtraction. It's really not going to change our answers. So 39 minus 9, if you need to solve that, solve it. You can solve the rest of the problem right now too if you would like to. Okay, so 39 minus 9 is 30 divided by, I got rid of those parentheses, remember, because I've solved everything within. And now I have 10 minus 5, which is 5. So 30 minus 5 equals 6, and we're done. Okay, last thing that I want to go over before I release you to practice these on your own is just a reminder of what operation this symbolizes. Both work the same. So whenever I have a number and a parenthesis next to each other and I really have no operational symbol there, so I don't have an addition symbol, I don't have a subtraction symbol, I don't have a multiplication or division symbol, the invisible symbol that's there, so if you don't know what operation it is, it's almost always going to be multiplication. There are so many different ways to write multiplication, and when there's not a symbol, so it's parentheses, what that means is multiplication. So 4 parentheses 2, that really just means 4 times 2. So 4 with parentheses 2 is 8. This is just 5 times 7, which would be 35. And this is just 6 times 8, which equals 48. So if anything comes up and it ends up being in this form where you have to solve, just know that the parentheses symbolize multiplication. So that's how you would solve that. But if you guys come across anything that you have no idea how to solve it or what the next step was, just let me know and message me, whatever, comment, and I can help you guys out with solving them. Also, these do have a lot of sample problems online. Math aids, let me make sure that I'm right here. Yeah, ooh, I don't know what happened. Okay, Math Aids has a lot of different sample sheets, but I will say that they have quite a few that have negative numbers in them. So if you come across something with a negative number that is not, like adding and subtracting negative numbers is not a 6th grade standard, so you don't have to do that. So if you come to that, you can either try and figure it out if you want to, if you would like a challenge, but also just know that if it comes to that, you don't have to solve those problems. So look for problems that don't include any negative numbers in them, because that is really the 6th grade standard there. But again, Math Aids has a lot of practice worksheets, and if you really just even Google order of operations practice worksheets or PEMDAS practice worksheets, you should get a lot of them, but I'll link some down below. So make sure that you are practicing these. I know I say this about everything, but PEMDAS is really one of those things that you have to practice in order to become proficient in. So do as much practice as you can and check your work. All right, so I will probably actually stay within this standard for a little bit. We're in expressions and equations right now, but you know, who knows what I'll come to you with tomorrow, because I told you guys I was going to come to you with statistics, and here I am with PEMDAS. So we'll see, but I'll upload another video soon, probably tomorrow. Stay safe, stay healthy. I miss you guys, and let me know if you guys have any questions. Bye.